just to give an overview of the delivery model, which I've kind of covered already. So it's the same for Mobilise TA. There will be 6 PLCs during the year. And there will be an autumn term induction. So again, it looks on the research around what effective CPD is. So we had the workshops, didn't we, delivered by the EEF in September. What we'll do this time instead is we'll have an afternoon, I think it's just going to be an afternoon, where if you're doing cognition, we'll really start delving into what the research says first of all. It won't be a PLC format, it'll just say what does the research suggest, how does this look like in terms of practice. So that's how we'll kickstart in the autumn. So each school must be in a cluster focusing on the same thing, ideally of 8 to 12. If you absolutely love being in your cluster of 17 and you religiously want to stick to that, that's fine. There's no way that we're going to turn that back, but we would try and, I think there's going to be a slight realignment here in terms of we want to work on this, we want to work on this, and if we could get those clusters together, it'll adhere more closely to the research. I suppose there's big questions here now around your cluster groups about what's most important. If you really value the cluster groups that you're in, then you might just do a best fit scenario where you say, well, some of us want to do this, some wants to do that, but okay, but let's do this because we really value those clusters. That's the thing, that collaboration is most important. If the content is most important for you and you're desperate to do cognition, no one else is doing it, will help fit you up, match you with other people so that you can do that. So, but each cluster must select a cluster lead. So, just again, the model, so Mobilise project lead at the back of the room. And there are research champions for all these things. So for example, feedback and marking will be led by someone from the TSA, from the teaching school, and then the cluster leads will fit into there. The nice thing about having these people is if we've got a group doing feedback and marking down in the south of the county and nobody else doing it apart from right up on the coast, they'll coordinate that. So if there's any interesting nuggets that are coming out from one place or the other, then they'll disseminate that across. Yeah, I don't think that's any different from what I've just told you. Okay, conditions for success. Again, the research on this kind of scale-up work of what there is out there in terms of this kind of scale is quite clear that it has to have leadership support. I still personally think that the leaders should be head teachers, but that's just my opinion. So a considered choice of cluster lead, a considered choice of school-based lead, embedding it in strategic priorities. So one difference this year from last year, we required you to submit school improvement plans, which were just onerous and a pain, but that was because of the EEF. Because they're not in the room, so I can just blame them. So we won't require you to submit those. It also was an error in my point, because what it did was it held schools to account, but of course learning doesn't happen in schools, does it? Learning happens in classrooms. So actually the accountability system here has got to be the classroom, because that's the cutting edge, that's the sharp end, that's where difference make, and that's where the accountability should be held. And that was, to me, one of the learning from the current Mobilise project, is that we need to focus on those professional learning communities. The shadow learning communities must happen. Each teacher must have their own individual action plan, because it's them that's making the difference. And we know that within school differences are bigger than between school differences. It doesn't matter which school you go to, he says, but it does matter whose classroom you end up in. It's as simple as that. Clarity of aims and fidelity of the evidence. Time in the diary, that'll be set out. I mean, it was good this year, I think, but that'll be set out a lot clearer when that is. I think that and we'll hold that quite, so at the end of this year, hopefully, before you even move into next year, you'll know very clearly when those dates are, etc. And it'll be easier for you to plan, because I know it was a real pain. But it was also an inhibitor in terms of success of the project. Okay, and I'm starting to be a PLC bore now, because funnily enough, the ideal maximum is 8 to 12, if not maximum, and the recommended frequency is 4 to 6, but we're going for 6, and the shadow PLCs must happen this time. That accountability level's got to happen in the classroom, not in the schools. So school leaders need to make decisions about your choice, the cluster of schools. So there's conversations to be had in a fairly short space of time, and it is slightly over to you to have those dialogues. School-based lead and who the cluster lead is going to be, and of course there's some diplomacy there in terms of we had this person last year, but hopefully whether they want to do it, for example, in a second year is a conversation. And if they didn't want to do it, do they do want something else? In which case, maybe they want to do this, for example. And register via the link which has been sent to schools. So that link has gone out to all schools, and it's
on the website page as well.
So it's,
it takes you to the pie chart.
and the deadline is the 23rd of June.